Hey everyone, it's David here. Welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Hope everyone has had a great day today. It is a Monday, so I hope everyone has had a great weekend as well. As most of you know, I take the weekends off now, but there were a lot of teasers, spell teasers that came out during the weekend that we want to talk about today. So these were released by our favorite data miner, the Amoplex on Twitter. So let's just go ahead and talk about some of them. So first one that came out is the Scion of Life. Basically, it does 930 damage, and the ×2 gambit is 2+ heals on self. I think. I'm pretty sure that symbol means on self. But that's very interesting. This, I don't even know how hard this is. I mean, just double spray into a Scion. I don't know how you can counter a sprite. It's not like an overtime where you can actually triage or shift a sprite. I don't even think you can counter a sprite. I know a few schools can, but it's not like the opponent overtime condition. The opponent overtime condition, every school can counter using the TC triage. But overtime heal on self gambit, that's very hard to counter. I know Ice has a school that steals healing over time, but I don't know if that's no TC or not, but I've never seen a TC of that spell used ever. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's no TC, right? It's going to be a lot harder to counter this double sprite Scion possibility. I know there's a few, maybe like 1 or 2 of those new Lemuria spells that counters overtime heals. But again, that's not school specific. That's still school specific. So certain schools will have no counter to like a double sprite Scion. Mana Burn finally got nerfed. Finally. Part of me wants to say thank you, KingsOwl, for doing the right thing, but the other part of me feels like you took too long, right? I don't know why it takes this long. I personally don't think this spell should exist. Right, I don't think it should exist. But if you're not going to take it out, at the very least, just take quick action on things like this. But finally, the spell shouldn't exist, in my opinion, that's all. There's some more releases on the 3-pip Lemuria spells, the Lemuria utilities. Honestly, those are really kind of hard to understand. I understand, like, you want to come out with more spells, you want to introduce more strategy and more thinking into PvP. But I do have a little bit of concern as far as how complicated these new spells are. They're complicated. I think really competitive duelists are gonna actually have to sit down and study these like it was like a school homework or something. I don't know. It's complicated. Some people just aren't willing to study this. Like a lot of people don't even study for their real school homework. So I really doubt they're gonna be willing to just sit down and study Wizard101 spells. Definitely some people will, but some people won't, and the people that won't, they're not gonna like all these complicated changes. I'm personally someone who I don't like complicated things. I like to keep things very simple, but that's just me. But yeah, I do understand the thought process, because I guess it is a good thing to introduce more thinking and more strategy into PvP, even though I may not like to think personally. Primal Oni, that's what I said, Primal Oni. 555, very interesting, same damage as the Ice Oni. This is a pattern that I've noticed KingsOwl do as far as making Ice and Life spells do identical damage, which is a little bit confusing because which school is actually supposed to be number 7 in DPP, right? I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Ice because they're number 1 in health. So I'm pretty sure Ice is supposed to be number 7 in DPP. So I have no idea why they keep making number 6 in DPP, Life, and number 7 in DPP, Ice. I don't know why they keep making those two have the exact same damage. I don't think it's fair because if you compare it to Fire and Myth, right? Fire, number 2 in DPP, Myth, number 3 in DPP. The difference between their Onis is like 65. The difference between Fire and Myth is 65. Meanwhile, the difference between Myth and Life and Ice, because they're the same, is like 45, right? That's crazy to me. That's really crazy to me that Number 6 and number 7, the exact same, but number 3 and number 4 have a 65 difference. That's more difference than Myth and, oh, this is a very cool, you don't usually, I mean, I don't watch matches, so I don't know how often that Sign of Life is used, but that's very cool. Anyways, what was I saying? But yeah, it's just crazy, like, the difference between 2 and 3 is larger than the difference between 3 and 7 and 3 and 6. Like, make that make sense to me. Make that make sense to me. Another big update, Redbeard stated that Diego will be replaced with a chess-like timer, and Team PvP will definitely be switching to a snake turn order. Really, Team PvP, it should not even be like a thought, because, you know, the Team PvP almost basically doesn't even exist anymore. So, you know, just focus on 1v1 for now. But Diego getting replaced, probably a good thing, It's very difficult to program an AI to pick a winner, because there's so many different variables in a PvP match, and it's hard for someone to judge, like, okay, which variable is actually more important than the other, and what really determines who outplays who, because that's so subjective. So I do think that this is a good thing. As far as the chess timer, would that be a good idea? I have no idea. I've never played chess, like I mentioned before. I'm more of a checkers kind of guy, just because it's simpler. You know, I generally don't like complicated things, but, you know, obviously I can read a description about it, but reading a description about something and actually having experience doing that thing is completely different. So even if I read a full-on description of it, I'm not going to be able to come up with a good thesis as far as do I think it's a good or bad idea, because I haven't had experience in it. I have to actually play in a chess timer system to give feedback. But generally, I generally trust the things that KingsOut does. I've always had the belief that KingsOut, they're basically design geniuses. My only thing with them is I felt like you know, they took too long to implement their ideas, and they kind of neglected their game, and especially the PvP aspects in the past. That was my only thing with them. I've always thought they were geniuses at design. You know, I have some questions about their coding background. You know, I don't know if they have the strongest coding culture at KingsOut. But if there's one thing that they are good at, like their one strong advantage, it's their design ability. They're geniuses at design. Because that's the reason why this game was such a blockbuster success, and why most people in this game are adults now, and we played this game for like almost or over 10 years, on and off, of course, because you never just play a game continuously for that long. But most people that play this game were adults, and we've been playing this game on and off for like 10 years. And the reason is because this game really is designed very well, whether it be, you know, the music, the choreography, the actual art design of this game, you know, the UI, the battle interface, as far as this dual circle, it's all very, very well designed. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's just very well designed. If there's one thing KingsOut does really, really well, it's design. So that's all I'll say about that. You know, I always give them the benefit of the doubt. If they feel like, or if Rabier feels like a chess timer is the best way to go, then I think he's probably right. The one thing I will say is, and I'm not trying to insinuate that they got the idea of Diego from me, but before Diego, my idea was always, you know, you gotta lower the damage, but also limit the amount of reshuffles people could use. So they lowered the damage that people could do, but instead of limiting reshuffles, they introduced a timer. And I have a suspicion that it's because they don't know how to limit cards, or they can't limit cards, because they came out and said in the past that, hey, some of the old coding we literally can't even touch because it's coded in a old school style way, and we just can't touch it. So some things in this game they just can't change even if they want to. So with that said, I have a suspicion they don't know how to limit cards, right? So they can't limit reshuffle. They can only make something no PP, but they can't limit it. Obviously, then you come to, well, what if reshuffle as a spell is just no PP? Then you get a little bit questionable. I feel like you should be able to reshuffle once in a match. But if it's either no PvP or unlimited copies, I probably still will lean no PvP. But clearly Ratbeard is leaning towards unlimited, because this is assuming that they don't know how to limit reshuffles because the coding is too old. So if that is the case, then he's coming out with an alternative, which is this chess timer system, which is perfectly fine. I mean, when you have an obstacle in your way, all you can do is try to find ways around it, and his way around it is a chess-like timer. Another thing that I've heard, another thing that a King's Out developer has said is they want to make spells like, they want to make shadow spells and scion spells unenchantable. I definitely like that idea. I think in general, like, the less damage people can do, like, the more spells people use in a given PvP match, the more strategy there is involved, right? You don't want, like, a 2-spell combo, like, straight off the bat, right when you get a Shadow Pip. So, you know, I generally like that idea of just weakening the amount of damage that everybody can do. And, you know, I feel like enchants were always meant to be, like, a PvE concept. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like enchant in PvP doesn't really make that much sense. It adds another layer of RNG. You might not think enchants are RNG, but it is RNG because the way you draw cards in this game is RNG. So sometimes, like, you might not draw your enchant on your final hit, right? Like, let's say if you drew an enchant and you enchanted your hit, you would have won, but you didn't draw an enchant, and because of that, you lost, right? So it's a little bit of an unnecessary layer of luck. Not to mention getting rid of enchants on scions and shadow spells. That'll decrease the barrier of entry a little bit, because new players that are just starting on PvP, they don't have access to Solar Surge. So, I mean, enchants in general, I feel like, are not really necessary. Like, the idea of picking a card in your hand and then picking another card in your hand just to combine those two cards, I don't know if I like that idea. I don't know any other card game that does that. That's definitely unique to Wizard101. And I get it, Wizard101 is, to a certain extent, a unique game. You don't want to just completely copy other games. But there's a formula to these card games that have proven to be massive successes. And you just have to look at, really just Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the most successful games in the history of the world. And they don't have that system where you're clicking one card in your hand and then you're clicking another card in your hand to enchant that card. It's a nice idea, right? It's a nice idea. You have to be careful of always trying to think about new ideas, because sometimes you don't want to fix what's not broken. Because and that's probably what happened. Like, King's Out was trying to think about, okay, what new things can we do on this game? Hey, let's go ahead and do this. It's kind of unique and interesting. But I don't know. I feel like it adds an extra unnecessary layer of luck, and in general, I think the less damage people do, the better, because the more spells that you use, the more strategy is involved. So I generally like that idea. I do think people do a little bit too much. Well, I think defensive schools do too much damage. That's what I'm just gonna say. I think balance do too much damage. Given their resist, and it's not that balance has more damage than the offensive schools. It's that their damage is high enough and their resist is also high compared to an offensive school, that when you get a balance versus offensive school matchup, it seems like the balance is doing more damage because the balance has more resist and the offensive school spells are doing less. So it seems like balance is actually doing more damage than the offensive school. And it's not just that it seems like that. That's actually how it is. That's actually, like, balance versus an offensive school. Balance actually does do more damage, even though they have less damage in the damage stat category. And that's just because you have to be careful about the way that the stats interact, right? Like, you think giving an offensive school more critical makes them critical more and makes their criticals stronger, but that's not the case if you're giving defensive schools more block. Right? If you're giving defensive schools more block, then the offensive school is actually doing less on their criticals, right? You have to keep in mind, you have to compare, like, the end results with the end result, right? Like an offensive school's crit combined with the defensive school's block should end up doing more on a critical hit than a defensive school with lower crit, but also critting on a defensive. A defensive school with lower crit, but they're critting on a offensive school that has lower block also. So that basically counters out as if they're basically the same. When I have to assume that's not how it was meant to be. But I don't know if that was a little bit too complicated, but that's basically it for this video. I guess we could have something else in the background while I wrap this up. But those are basically the changes. As far as updates to this channel, my Storm that I'm questing the Cosmic is level 136, and my Ice that I'm questing the Cosmic is level, I think, 84. I'm trying to like quest on dual screens so I can get it done faster, but this game is such a grind. I'm actually dreading Chrysalis. Like I'm really dreading Chrysalis. Something should be done about Chrysalis because it's a large deterrent to people questing. Like people don't want to go through Chrysalis again. And as far as, I read through the Wizard101 Reddit a lot. Ever since I came back to WizTube, I feel like, okay, I should get a more of a grasp on the community of Wizard101. So I joined the Wizard101 Reddit community. And, most of the times I see, like, 90% of the times I see support for, content creators like Sauce and developers like Ratbeard. But, there are 10% of posts where I see are pretty negative as far as people saying that Ratbeard is making things worse. I completely disagree with that. I feel like, I definitely think most of the things he's done are positive. And, just keep in mind, like, we've gone years, maybe like a decade of KingsIsle not giving a crap about PvP, right? We finally have what we always wanted, which is them just paying attention to PvP, giving it more regular updates, more oversight, like a real PvP game does. So, this is what we've always wanted, and we finally now have it. And you have to keep in mind, like, Ratbeard, he's an OG, right? He's been with the company since the beginning. At least I think he was, right? You have to keep in mind, like, he was part of the design team that made from scratch a blockbuster success that was at one point. At one point, I believe KingsIsle was worth probably $1 billion, or close to $1 billion, right? Because their annual revenue was in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and usually a gaming company goes for at least, like, what? A successful gaming company, I feel like at least 4x, 5x of their revenue or earnings, right? So you have to keep in mind, at one time, and I know it's hard to grasp around that because of KingsIsle's decline, but you just have to understand, like, nothing is just peak forever. You don't just go up, 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 up. That's very, very few and far between. Like, 99% of successful gaming companies, they eventually hit a plateau and they kind of either stay stagnant or decline. That's just the realities of not just gaming companies, but just real life, right? Like PewDiePie, most successful YouTuber on YouTube, the history of YouTube. He's pulling, what, like 2, 3, 4 million views, even though he has, like, what, 100 million subscribers, right? And it happens, right? Eventually, people just stop playing your game, people stop watching your video, and you just move on. But, you do have to attract new players. So, that's not my job, that's their job. But anyways, all that is just to say that, Ratbeard was part of a design team that went from scratch to a company worth $1 billion, right? That's really just insane. Like, there's very few people in the world that could say that. Very few people in the world. Again, I think that's largely accredited to their strong design background. I think they're geniuses at design. As far as the business aspect and coding aspect, I have my questions about, but they're geniuses at design. I trust them on design concepts, basically, is what I'm saying. But that's basically it for this video. It's gone on long enough. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share, and I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, see ya.
Ever since the day that you went away.